What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining my great co-host Ralph Hanna. And guys, here we are, another episode. A really busy week for Paraguayan football as a whole. Obviously, dealing with stuff happening with the Paraguayan teams in the continental competitions, Paraguayans abroad. We're already towards the end of the month, Ralph. We're already heading in towards what I feel like we're still looking at what's been going on in the World Cup qualifiers, but yeah, in a couple of weeks, we're probably gonna have to focus on those games against Venezuela and sorry, against Ecuador and Venezuela. So I think that's gonna be one to look out for, and certainly some players who have been trying to get some minutes, some who have been able to perform, and yeah, I think everyone's trying to make a case of making Gustavo Alfaro's list. But yeah, it's been a good week, and even more so with the futsal World Cup that's happening right now in Uzbekistan. Paraguay defeated at the time recording Afghanistan, and they're on to the quarterfinals of the Futsal World Cup, which, traditionally they've always been kind of a powerhouse, but they've never been able to lift the main trophy of the FIFA Futsal World Cup. So yeah, it's been an eventful week for Paraguayan football as a whole.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Roberto, and everybody watching and listening. Yeah, plenty going on, right? We had the Intermedia finishing up. We got the Clausura going on, Copa Sudamericana, Paraguayans doing well abroad. And you were mentioning the World Cup qualifiers. Yeah, I mean that kind of fever is coming back because they put the tickets on sale yesterday. So for $13, you can watch Paraguay against both Venezuela and Argentina, which are the two home coming up October and November, which means potentially you're watching Messi for less than less than $7 if you divide those tickets in two. So I mean, there's a good deal going on for people, and everybody is, I think, still in that mix and talking about what's going on in World Cup qualifiers after what happened. I think there's a lot more positivity, and then with the actual World Cup going on, it's only the second time Paraguay have made the quarterfinals of the FIFA Futsal World Cup. But the previous futsal, not recognized by FIFA, they have actually won that tournament in the past, that World Cup. I think it's the AMF. I think it's the amateur version, I guess it would be called. So they do have a great history, and we have players like I think Miguel Almiron, Enzo Gonzalez. They were all brought up playing futsal as kids, especially in Asuncion when there's not as much space. So there's a big culture of it. You get games televised in Paraguay of the local league. So just something for people to understand. This is a big part of culture, of footballing culture, and it does actually impact on some of the professional players.
Yeah, that's obviously a big deal. And, like you mentioned, they are four-time winners of the AMF Futsal World Cup, which I didn't realize until now that that's actually headquartered in Asunción. So clearly some connection again towards Paraguay in terms of like governing bodies for specific sports. But yeah, no, it's interesting. And I think certainly, at the time of recording, they are awaiting the winner of Thailand and France to see who they will play in the quarterfinals. And if they do win that one, they'll take on the winner of Kazakhstan and the winner of either Argentina or Croatia. So it could be a potential rematch actually in the semifinal because sorry, not rematch, never mind, because that was Uzbekistan. But yeah, no, I think it's going to be a very, hopefully, as Paraguay have kind of risen, I've seen kind of the running jokes of how the Alfaro effect has really affected all sport, really, with Paraguay doing well in the World Cup qualifiers. We also had, this isn't related to football, but Josh Durkin doing so well in F2 and automobile racing. So it's yeah, it's kind of an effect that he's doing. And we're starting to see Alfaro, at some of these matches as well, going back to the World Cup qualifiers, starting to see him. And I'm curious to see if he is going to play some more local players as well, if that's going to be something that is going to be emphasized in this next call up, or if it's going to be the same as before. We see like a majority of them based abroad. But I do have to ask you, how do you feel about those combos? I don't think I've ever seen that for a Paraguay game, that you get two tickets for, that you're able to go to two games. Because I think Cedro did that before for the Copa Libertadores, where they had this sale where you basically got all the tickets for every single game in the group stage. But I don't think I've ever seen Paraguay do that.
Yeah, I can't remember if it's been done before, but it's definitely a tactic to try and get people to the less attractive game by including it in the more attractive, which, like you said, Cerro had done before, I think, with Copa Libertadores, and you could get, yeah, a local league game and that kind of thing. I mean, let's hope what they really want is for it to be a sellout in both games, knowing that that was so important in the match against Brazil, right? Having the crowd behind them, I think that really gave everybody this feeling that something new was happening and that there was almost a turn coming in everything that had been going downhill until then. So I think that's what they're really hoping for, is that we don't lose that momentum. Let's say Paraguay don't get a result in Ecuador and then they're playing Venezuela. They don't want that to be a half-empty stadium. So I mean, as a marketing strategy goes, it's not a bad idea. And just picking up on one of your points you mentioned about the local players, the indication is we're not going to have a lot of local players called up, because this time the APF have actually scheduled a week of Clausura football during the Fecha FIFA. So last time they decided not to play games in the feeling that, well, maybe lots of teams won't be able to fulfill their fixtures because they'll have lots of call-ups. As that wasn't the case, this time the Paraguayan FA said, well, let's just play through that weekend. So at the moment, the indication or the feeling is that it won't be too many local players, and that's why they're willing to go ahead and play those local fixtures.
It's interesting, actually. Now you think about it, it's actually very interesting because, there have been some rumors of, players being naturalized as well. Then the latest one was from Agustin Sandez, the player from Rosario Central, the left back. So clearly that is an indication that Alfaro is trying to get more players from abroad. But yeah, I guess obviously we'll wait and see as we gear up to that in a couple weeks, actually, Raf. It's hard to believe it's coming right past. We're still celebrating those two victories, not victories, the two results against Uruguay and Brazil, and now we have to focus on Ecuador and Venezuela. And one of the players that is obviously going to be on the radar for a lot of Paraguay fans is someone that I've had the fortune of being able to, well, actually, both of us really had a fortune of going. If you remember 2 years ago, Ralph, going into the game between Paraguay and Colombia in Miami, we were here for his first ever game for the Paraguay national team. And now I could say that I was at Nottingham Forest at the game in England because I had taken a trip to England to go watch the Paraguayans. Unfortunately, Miguel Mino wasn't able to play against Newcastle against Fulham. They lost 3-1. But I was able to head off to Brighton, off to Sussex, and see them take on Nottingham Forest, hoping for the big affair between the All Paraguayans of Julio Enciso and Ramon Sosa. Obviously, it wasn't Julio Enciso that was on the pitch that stole all the headlines, but it was Ramon Sosa, because Ramon Sosa was able to score his first ever goal in English football after his third game in uh in England for Nuno Espirito Santo. It was a really nice moment for him, and I think for a lot of Paraguayans, for him to finally break his duck. And obviously, this is someone that's still trying to find his feet in England. He's kind of honestly has not been that bad as of the recent cameos, and obviously getting the goal in a tough fixture that is Brighton away, I think is certainly good, because obviously they're still unbeaten, they're still doing very well. But yeah, getting his first goal, I think certainly is going to be a big thing for him, for Gustavo Alfaro, obviously trying to make some decent selections, because if you remember, Ramon Sosa didn't start any of those two games against Uruguay and Brazil. But looking at what's been going on with Julio Enciso and Miguel Almirón, even though Alfaro did mention that, it didn't matter how much playing time he was getting at Newcastle, he's still going to get considered for the Paraguay national team. But yeah, just personally going on to Ramon Sosa scoring, it's a big moment for him. And yeah, definitely a long time coming for a lot of Paraguayans who have always supported him.
Yeah, it's a great moment. I think he had a very good record in debuts, because I think he'd scored in his Talleres debut and maybe even at Gimnasia. I can't remember. So he usually gets off to a good start. And like you say, it's only taken 3 games, and there's not even 3 full games. So it's, in terms of goals per minute, he's already right up there and doing well. And I think for him, it's going to be important confidence wise that as well, the coach can think he can bring him on in away games, which are usually tougher matches to find goals and find results for attacking players, and he's able to do that. So it's a great moment for him. And like you say, it maybe gives Alfaro something to think about, where he's trying to get that balance between using his best players and using players that are on form. And I think you're right. He said that what he really wants is, he's not looking so much at club form, and that was proved with Cáceres from Lanús, who's hardly playing for Lanús, but he got the start against Brazil to Mark Vinicius and did a great job. And you feel like Alfaro wants more that, as long as I can get the players to do their jobs with me, he'll still be happy to pick them. But it definitely gives him something to think about with Ramon Sosa, arguably now coming in to be the most important player alongside Diego Gomez, or playing at the kind of highest level, because Enciso and Almiron aren't getting that game time. So it's definitely gives him something to think about, but it's a good problem to have, right? To have this going on. Roberto, I got to ask you, because you were there. So what was it like? And did you have to hide your celebration? Because I'm guessing you're within the Brighton fans as he scored.
Yeah, but this is Brighton we're talking about. They're not exactly, hooligan central or anything. No, it was nice. I mean, I just happened to just I don't know why. I was like obviously trying to record, like I was able to record the goal from Danny Welbeck. It was like a nice free kick. It was the second goal for Brighton, and the penalty from Chris Wood. But I was just like looking at the camera, I was like making sure what's going, because obviously I filmed the time that Ramon Sosa was able to go in when he got subbed in. So that was obviously a big deal. And then I'm just like looking around, seeing like, okay, because he was obviously where I was sitting, it was heading towards the Nottingham Forest area for the second half. So clearly, if he was going to score, I was going to have a good view of it. But then I was just filming, and then I saw a counterattack. I think it was Jota that played him that ball, and I just started filming. I was like, wait a minute, that's Ramon Sosa that just scored. And again, I obviously wasn't going to celebrate like that. And come on, I don't want them to beat me up over there in Brighton, but you could see as well from the away fans, they were definitely incredibly cheerful. And yeah, I mean, it was a nice experience, and I think it was really nice to see, a Paraguayan score, certainly in a big game like that, and obviously in a stadium like the Amex. I think it's certainly something that obviously for a lot of Paraguayans that don't have the opportunity to do that, it's a dream come true. And we've always reiterated his story for many years. I think for Ramon Sosa to get where he was is a great feeling. And I think now it's the case of how he's going to continue that form, if he's going to make that starting position, because I think with Nottingham Forest doing so well, there's going to be a lot of question marks, and they've brought in a lot of good players. So, this is kind of expected of them to do well. But I'm curious to see if Ramon Sosa is able to, fit into that team, because obviously he's got players like Elanga, Hudson-Odoi, you got someone like Elliot Anderson, who used to play at Newcastle United. I think it's going to be interesting to see if he does make that starting position, because they did pay a significant amount of money for him. But I think scoring that goal at least gives, Espirito Santo some opportunity to be like, okay, yeah, this guy, if he's doing this already in his third game, then at least it allows me to really consider him as someone that could be very much trustworthy in the future.
Yeah, definitely elevates his status, right? So when you think about who am I going to use from my bench players, he's moved into that of he's probably going to now be the first, second change in games, especially if they're looking for a goal. And so there's then the logical next step is then to try and find a starting place in the team. But he's definitely put himself in there, where what we saw with somebody like Julio Enciso very early on, there were a lot of games where he didn't get off the bench. And so he didn't get that chance to shine until towards the end of that first season, when obviously he did, and that's when he really got his run of games. So it's good that he's doing it at this point of the season, I think, where he's kind of putting himself now as that logical first, second change in games, and then hopefully grows from there.
Yeah, and I think now the big question mark is with the other two Paraguayans, who I kind of are like the bigger and more established names. We didn't see them hit the pitch at all. And Cecil's been playing here and there. He's playing some League Cup matches. Um, hasn't really shown so far. Almiron barely gets any playing time. There had been some rumors in the last few days for both these two players, actually, that I think for Enciso, they linked him to teams like West Ham. I think Almiron, it looks like it's going to be inevitable that the departure is going to happen in January, because I don't see how he fits in Eddie Howe's plans. And I think they were really hoping that he was to leave in the summer. So I think now, with his lack of playing minutes, it purely looks like the writing's on the wall for him to depart English football. But for Julio, I think it's kind of a weird one, really, because I think he has not demonstrated as much as he should under this new manager, Javier Huitzeller. So I'm curious to see what happens to both of them come January.
Yeah, that's right. I think Almiron, like you hit the nail on the head, and then within Enciso is Mitoma coming back from injury, who I think he missed a lot of last season, if I remember correctly, and they seem to be finding their style, and they don't really need Enciso for it at the moment. They're doing doing well, getting the results they need. But I don't know. I wouldn't be too concerned at this stage, because you do get the feeling that Julian Cesar is he's such a good talent that it's somebody you want to have on the bench if you are in a losing position, or you do need that kind of spark of magic to come in. So I don't know. I'm still more hopeful for Encisa, but like you say, I think Almiron is in January. He'll be on the way out, and who knows where, right? There's been links to so many different places.
Yeah, there've been links to Saudi Arabia, to MLS, and again, like you said, the difference with him and Enciso are 10 years. So clearly there is that sense of like we're not giving up on a player that is 20 years that literally is 20 years old compared to someone that is 30 that has already been in England for quite some time. I think that might be a different statement to really have a conclusion on both these players. But yeah, happy for Ramon Sosa. Happy to see him, perform well. Happy to be there as well. And yeah, I think we can say that the Guarani Vision has been at some memorable moments for Ramon Sosa. So if he needs a goal or needs something to happen to him, we need to go to that game. We need to. Hey, who knows if we go to the qualifiers and if one of us can go to the qualifiers against Argentina or Venezuela, maybe he scores. You never know.
There you go. We're the good luck charms. I like that.
Exactly. Let's switch gears to some, more pessimistic news, and we're going into the Copa Sudamericana because obviously we saw Libertad take out Cruzeiro in the quarterfinals, the last Paraguayan team available in this competition, for both these competitions, the Copa Libertadores and the Sudamericana. We had been so confident on this Libertad side under Danny Garnero that it perhaps was able to do something against the Cruzeiro side. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. They lost 2-0 at the Defensores del Chaco, goals from Kyle Jorge, who had a really good series against Libertad, and Lautaro Diaz scored the second goal. In the return leg at the Mineirao, Cruzeiro kind of had it done and dusted with making it 3-0 in aggregate after 12 minutes. But at least silver lining is we saw Roque Santa Cruz at 43 years old become the oldest player to score in a Copa Sudamericana. And I think the oldest player to score in any CONMEBOL competition. So not exactly Libertad wanting to obviously close out a season in the continental stage like that. But yeah, I've just been so surprised at how poor they were in these two games.
Yeah, it was disappointing because I think what we saw last night, the 1-1 during Cruzeiro in Belo Horizonte, we kind of thought that could happen. So we were hopeful that in the home leg they would have done enough to maybe force the issue either to penalties, or have sneaked the win at home. And they just started badly, and they in Asuncion, and I think that's really where the tie was lost. And they started badly, and it just reminded you of watching Garnero's teams in the Copa America with Paraguay, where all the goals they conceded in that tournament were in the first half, except for one against Brazil. So it was the same thing. They were conceding in the first half, then fixing the errors for the second half. But by then it's too late. And I think, like you said, it was very disappointing, and it was also, did he end up picking the right team, which is always maybe the issue with Garnero. So he starts with Alejandro Silva and Marcelo Fernandez in that home leg behind Aguilar. So it's a very attacking lineup, and Garnero has always done this. He wants to try and get out on the front foot and attack, but against very talented teams like the Brazilian sides, that can sometimes backfire. And I think ultimately it did. And I remember one thing actually that Fede mentioned when we were talking about it. One of the things is their defense, right? Diego Vieira and Nestor Jimenez as central defenders. They're not the fastest, and they're also maybe not the most accomplished. They're both getting on in years, and they've never really had that time, for example, in Europe, or even at a higher level in South America. So I think for them it was trying to keep clean sheets wasn't going to happen, as we saw that over the two legs. But yeah, I'm really happy for Roque. It's an incredible story because he's a player that he debuted so young, and you usually see when players have debuted so long, by the time they're like 37, 38, they're done. I mean, they've played so many games. Yeah, he was 15, as you were saying, Roberto, back in 1997. And I remember interviewing him one time, and he did say, when we're talking about his achievements, this is before he won all the titles in Paraguay coming back. He'd just come back to Olympia. He said, the biggest thing I ever did was get back from injuries. And so he had suffered so many injuries. And I do wonder if that's one of the things that kind of drives him on to keep playing, is that he feels he missed out a lot of playing time at his prime. And that's why he's still going, because just for people to understand, Roque Santa Cruz is the all-time top scorer for Paraguay. He came back to his boyhood club Olimpia, won everything. They just dominated while he was there. He is a multimillionaire. I'm sure he has properties in Spain where he used to live. He was one of the best played players in Mexico for a time. I mean, he's not doing this for money. He's just doing this, and he's not doing this to prove anything because, like I say, he's won everything. He just loves playing football, and he's still going at this very high level, right, of the Copa Sudamericana and scoring goals. So it's very impressive at 43 to still be doing that.
I think it's really a story of consistency to be at the top, or at least, performing at professional football for 26 years, 27 now. It's certainly something that is remarkable. I mean, there had been some rumors as well that this might be the last year of him playing professional. So all good things must come to an end, it doesn't, Ralph?
Yeah, eventually. I mean, just so people know, I mean, all Roque's kids are like bilingual because they grew up while he was in England, and then they went to international schools. And so there was always this idea that he was going to retire in Spain, because he had property there. Even when he came over to Paraguay, it was like, he's just gonna do 1 season, 2 seasons, and they're gonna go back and live in Spain. But I guess the kids are all growing up now. They're like teenagers. And so I think they guess like, well, maybe we'll just see it through in Paraguay. We're enjoying it. We like being back home. He came at about the same time as Nelson Idol, who came from Germany, right? And Nelson Idol's gone back to Germany, which is very interesting, right? That he did decide to go back to Europe, whereas Roque stayed in Paraguay. And like you say, because it might be his last year, but he's kind of enjoying it. So maybe he tries to do one more thing. There's Last night, Marco Trovato, who used to be the president of Olympia, was saying he should go back to Olympia and just retire there, which would be interesting because of the way the situation where he left them. But we'll see. I mean, either way, I'm sure Roque will be about in Paraguayan football. He's going to have some kind of role to play. Is it with media? Is it just doing more advertising? Which, by the way, for people that don't know, in Paraguay, he's advertising everything because he's always been kind of that star, right?
He's good
And
looking. Come on,
good
Ralph. Just say
looking
it. He's
guy.
good
There you
looking.
go. Yeah. So, so I mean, I'm sure he'll be around in the game somehow. He always told me he never wanted to do coaching, but you never know, right? That things could have changed. But even if he does stop playing, I think he'll still be around Paraguayan football for sure.
Maybe he becomes a politician. Maybe he becomes president. Maybe he becomes president. I mean, that's, listen, if Roque is listening to this, I wouldn't advise that because I don't want more people to hate you than maybe some Olympia fans have already hated you for leaving Libertad. So maybe not a good idea. But yeah, I agree. I think it's curious. I'm gonna be very I think it's gonna be a sad day when he does retire. I think for a lot of Paraguayans, regardless of club allegiances or whatnot, this is a player that kind of defined the modern era of Paraguayan football as a whole, became kind of the flag bearers, like you said, played everywhere in Europe, won a lot of titles um, in Paraguay and in Europe as well. So yeah, it's certainly going to be a big miss. But yeah, hopefully at least he got his goal, and who knows, maybe he gets his Clausura title. Maybe he gets one more title because we'll talk about the league race in a bit, but he's already won so much, he might as well go for one more. Just wanted to not switch gears, but I wanted to obviously focus on what's been going on in the rest of the tournament. So in the Copa Sudamericana, we actually have some Paraguayans. Actually, have an all Paraguayan match, Ralph. Well, three Paraguayans involved, really. We got Corinthians of Angel Romero taking on Racing in the semifinals. And in the all Paraguayan affair, we have Cruzeiro with Fabrizio Peralta and Lanús, of you mentioned, Juan Cáceres. So we'll have at least one Paraguayan in the final. The same thing will be happening in the Copa Libertadores, as we have Atlético Mineiro of Junior Alonso taking on River Plate of Adam Barreiro, whereas in the other semifinal, we have Botafogo of Catito Fernandez. So, and I think certainly for for everyone that maybe is a Cedro fan or just a Paraguayan, to have one Paraguayan play in a final in Paraguay, I think is a special moment. So we'll have at least one Paraguayan in the, even though a Paraguayan team hasn't been able to go to a final, at least we'll have one Paraguayan playing in the final of both the Copa Libertadores and the Sudamericana.
Yeah, and what Olympia fans want is that River Plate are in that final because they're still hoping there's a chance to be in the Club World Cup, or the FIFA Club World Cup, whatever it's going to be called. that's supposedly being held here in the US next year. There still seems to be so many question marks about this.
If it even
But
happens as well at this
if it
point.
even
Yeah,
happens,
that's
right?
the thing. Is it even
But
gonna happen?
Olympia are in the running if River could somehow win the title. And by the way, it'd be huge for the Barreiro family because Freddy Barreiro he played back-to-back Copa Libertadores, sorry, in 2013, 2014, lost them both, lost with Olympia, lost with Nacional. And now his younger brother Adam has a chance to be in a Copa Libertadores final as well, which is a rare occurrence as well, where you get brothers in different finals. And the chance, of course, that it's going to be in Buenos Aires in the Monumental. So that's even better, right? He would get a home game. Obviously, Freddy Barreto played in the old days where everybody got a home game because it used to be two legs, the final. But this would be really a special moment in what looks like an amazing stadium as well, by the way. I mean, they've renovated that stadium. I'd love to go. I've been previously, but I'd love to go now that it's been redone. It looks amazing.
Yeah, it certainly looked amazing. And also for the Sudamericana, I mean, we don't know where it's going to be played. In Asunción, there's still been some debates if it's going to be the Defensores or La Nueva Olla. But you have two ex-Cerro Porteño players that could face each other in that. You have Angel Romero and Fabricio Peralta, both from the Cerro Porteño Academy. They grew up not together, but they grew up in that academy. They made their debuts from there. So that could also be a special moment for them and for also yeah, just the players that want to win something because I think Angel Romero, he's won so much at Corinthians, hasn't been able to win anything, internationally. And yeah, I think as well, Angel Romero's on really good form, going back into the Paraguayan national team just a bit. He's also kind of pushing his name to get on the squad for next year, sorry, for next month for Gustavo Alfaro. So a lot of storylines, even though there's no Paraguayans involved, at least the Paraguayans abroad are at least getting some recognition. And hopefully one of them is going to win the titles because I think that's been a good record actually for Paraguayans winning these competitions. We saw with
Yeah,
Gustavo Gomez, who's won at Palmeiras a long time, and then some other Paraguayans here and there. So that is the hope that one of them can win the major titles in South America.
yeah, that's right. And you just reminded me talking about Paraguayans doing well abroad. Of course, you have it's already started the qualifying for the World Club Cup with Al Ain from UAE against Auckland City. And you had two Paraguayans, one setting up the other because Matias Segovia gave the ball to Kaku, who scored an amazing goal right at the end. And then Segovia got a second assist. That's really interesting because Matias Segovia is a player that was very exciting at Botafogo, but not getting 90 minutes. He used to come off the bench or he used to start, get 60 minutes. It was in that failed title run. He went to Belgium, didn't really get much time. Now he's found his way to Al Ain and he started to get a lot more minutes, right? I think obviously the level is not the same as Europe. So he's getting more game time, getting more minutes, and he's a really exciting player and a fun player to watch. Probably not ready for the national team, but we might get to see him on the world stage if Al Ain can make their way to the US.
Well, knowing Gustavo Alfaro, I mean, he's kind of picked out some of these players that maybe we thought we were ready. I mean, look, Hugo Cuenca, he got called up and he hasn't played a single game yet for the main team of Milan. So who knows? There might be a surprise here and there. We'll have to wait and see. As we switch gears now to, well, firstly, let's mention what happened in the Intermedia because obviously, that is going to be, obviously looking at what's going to happen in next year. We have one team that has been promoted officially. It's Deportivo Recoleta, Ralph.
Yeah, Recoleta is it's prime real estate in Asuncion. Their ground is like well next to the cemetery, which is called Recoleta Cemetery, but it's in a really nice area of Paraguay, of Asuncion, sorry, near the big shopping centers and let's say I guess the more wealthier kind of suburb. So they've always had this tiny pitch in there. It's a very small club. They play on artificial grass, artificial turf. So they have something a bit different. They've actually not been able to play in their home stadium this year. They've been going out to the Cardiff, which is the kind of new high performance center and playing there, which is also artificial turf. And they were last in Primera in 2002. So it's been over 20 years. They're finally back. Um, I think it's a really exciting kind of team. They have a young, sorry, president who's really tried to change things around with the club and really has pushed them to get to Primera. Because what happens with a lot of these smaller clubs that don't have big capacity stadiums is it's actually a huge financial burden to get promoted. Sometimes it's actually easier to stay in Intermedia than have to go into Primera and change your stadium or find rent stadiums every week. So you do see some clubs that are kind of almost happy just to hang around in Intermedia, but this president has really gone for it. They played really good football and they get to get their kind of shot to be back in Primera next year. And I think it'll be very exciting. I'm sure there'll be a lot of, I don't want to talk too much about the team because in a way these teams, they're going to change so much. So I don't know if we'll see that many players from this season there next year. But it's been a great season and we'll see what they can do in Primera. And it's really nice to have that team that hasn't been there for about 20 years. It reminds me, by the way, very much in terms of the small pitch, the traditional team and the size is very similar to Emiliano. So for people that have seen what Sportivo Emiliano could do, I think maybe or even Trinidense, I think Recoleta's kind of a blueprint or will follow that kind of blueprint.
And, obviously the team that is right behind them with only 2 points separating them, it looks like it's going to be Atletico Temetaru that will actually make the jump. And also a team that actually had, and, we mentioned Ramon Sosa recent just now, and he's come from that academy. He's actually from, he's a Temetaru alumni. So, and he was actually just playing what, like 4 years ago, something like that. And now he's made that jump to the Premier League. So clearly, this is also a team that's going to be recognized on a national level if they do indeed get promoted.
Yeah, Timbuktu are right behind. They could secure, I don't know if it's today, but they could secure this weekend for sure promotion. They're a team also we're talking about Nelson Aido that we talked about earlier. He was at that club many years ago as well. They're also Asuncion based, have a lot of um have had a lot of young players come through because they've always had kind of a good academy picking up just the mass of people that you have in that kind of area of Asuncion. They currently, I don't know if it's owned is not the right word because you can't own a club in Paraguay, but they're run by Danny Campos, who is Ramon Sosa's agent, and he's definitely, I don't know if he officially runs it, but he has definitely a lot of day-to-day activity with the club. He's also Miguel Almiron's agent as well. So just to give an idea of kind of the contacts he might have to be able to bring some players in and bring some players back. And they were in Primera B. So what they've really done is they're doing, I think, a back-to-back promotion, or it's either within 3 years. I can't remember exactly. But they've really pushed themselves up very quickly and with some of this investment. They were quite interesting last year. I think they had 3 African players in their team, which is a pretty rare sight for Paraguayan football. These were guys that had been playing in the reserves in Argentina for a long time, and then I guess Campos found them and brought them over, and so they were really important in that promotion to Intermedia. And now it looks like they're doing that kind of next jump, next leap, and I think it'll be really exciting. Sometimes I prefer having the teams from the interior, from the rural areas to be in, because I think it's more fun when you get like a true national league. But I think it's going to be really exciting to have these two teams that seem to be very well run and actually have a chance of doing something interesting like Emiliano and Trinidense have done, because Emiliano and Trinidense came up without much fan base after a long time, these small stadiums, but they managed to put really good teams together and start playing Copa Sudamerica. And so if these guys could do that too, I think is really interesting and again a model for other clubs that you can make the investment and take some of the risk to get into Primera and really see the rewards.
Definitely. We'll have to obviously follow their paths and see what they can do when they do obviously get promoted and play in the Primera División next year. As we look into what's been going on in the actual Primera División, I think it certainly has tightened up as we last spoken. Obviously, we still have Olimpia leading the way with 25 points, Nacional right behind them with 22, Cerro Porteño in third place with 21. And one team that is starting to get a bit more momentum is Libertad with 19 points. So a 6 point gap between first and fourth. I think it's safe to say that Libertad, you can't really count them out these days, even with someone like Danny Garnero who knows how to play these type of games. We saw Olimpia drop points on the weekend against Guarani Cerro and Nacional and Libertad picking up points as well. So yeah, it looks as if though this race is far from over, Ralph. I think obviously a big one happening this weekend is Libertad against Nacional, 3 points separating both those two teams. So a win for Libertad can really now put them back into the driver's spot if they haven't been already for this Clausura title.
Yeah, I think Libertad are such kind of a dangerous team to be sitting around in fourth place and only 6 points behind. So they play Nacional this weekend, and I think either one of their next two games after that is Guarani. That's the two teams Olympia dropped points to, right? They lost to Nacional, they drew a Guarani. And so if Libertad takes 6 points from there and start making up some of the difference, you might start to see that they really push Olympia. Now, this isn't to count out Cerro Porteño as well, who are, of course, are also in the running. But you look at what Libertad have done, especially under Garnero. You look at maybe the psychological part that when Olympia were winning all those titles, Garnero was the coach for most of them. And so there's that idea of, oof, this guy's back. He's bringing his team together. They're starting to playing well and really starts up the pressure. So I think the big game is the Nacional match this weekend, because obviously on the flip side, if Nacional could pull off a result, which they did do against Olympia, they would be joint top of the table. I think they play just before. Oh no, they play after. Sorry, no, they play after Olympia this weekend. They're on Sunday. But anyway, they'll be pushing and still keeping that just one result away, because at the moment 3 points, obviously you can make that up in a given weekend. So it's still very tight. On the Olympia side, they have a pretty easy run coming up. So they have 3 games that they should win. They got General Caballero now, then Trinidense, and then I think it's Sol. So really is they should take 9 points from there. But if they don't, that's where I think, yeah, the kind of nerves will start coming in, and you could see someone like Libertad just taking the top spot maybe in the last day or something, but just surprising them with that.
I think a team that we haven't recognized, or those de Mayo. It felt like they could be kind of the darlings and the Cinderellas of this, but they've just fallen way behind, which I think was expected just because of the quality that they have in comparison to, your Libertad, Olimpia, Cerros, and Nacionals. But yeah, no one's even mentioning them being kind of a potential just being in the race, even though they're 1 point behind Libertad as well. So we're already mentioning them as a team that could win it.
So what's really happened though is they lost 2 home games in a row, which they just hadn't done. They've been so good at home. So that for those that don't remember, Dos de Mayo is right up in the northern border with Brazil. So it's a big trip for anybody to go there. It's often a little bit cooler there than further down south. And they actually lost 2 home games in a row, which is very surprising because they've been so strong there. That's what got them promoted from Intermedia. That's what got them on this very good run. And the 2 games were Sol de America and General Caballero. So there's 2 teams that they shouldn't be losing to if they want to fight in the title. So I think by giving up that spot could be difficult. Obviously now they play Cerro the weekend, so maybe there's something they can try and pull back there. But usually what we saw is Dos de Mayo weren't a strong away, so to try and find that win against Cerro away could be difficult.
It's going to be very difficult to see. It's going to be a very interesting race, really, with this Clausura, because obviously now with Libertad out of the Copa Sudamericana, all the attention is going to be placed on them to be able to win this. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on what's going on as we always do here on Guarani Vision. For myself, Roberto Rojas, and Ralph Hanna, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.